Why is my Zoom? Okay. Okay. How's participation been?
Good. So it looks like we've got 173 right now in here with us, and I'm sure that number will keep going up. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kara Anderson. I'm the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Coordinator for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as a PAM Steering Committee member. Welcome to our closing session, Why Self-Care is More Important Than Ever. Just a reminder, if you haven't yet, you can grab the handouts and slides from this session in the downloads section of the registration webinar. And with that, join me in welcoming our presenter, Christine Triano, adult and adolescent psychotherapist and director of mental health for the Center for Connection in Pasadena, California. And Christine, before I do that, I forgot to tell folks, if you have any questions for this session, please put the questions that you have throughout the session in the Q&A bottom part and not the chat. And then we will have sort of a dedicated Q&A time at the end. So thank you, everyone. And Christine, it's all yours.
Thank you, Kara, and good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here at Parenting Awareness Michigan and for your 28th annual conference. It seems like there's been some really wonderful speakers today, so much great information. And, you know, speaking of self-care, I think about how joining together in community is so important right now. And I hope everyone has had a chance to experience a sense of that together in this space today. So I'm going to start with a confession.
Christine,
yeah.
I just want to interrupt before you start. We're in your presenter view, not full screen view.
Oh, huh. Let's see. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to catch that before we started going. You may just have to share the monitor that's on and not necessarily the PowerPoint.
Apologies for that. Let's see. Yeah. I was saying I'm going to start with a confession. It goes kind of like this. My name is Christine, and I used to be very bad at self-care. So by the time I was pregnant with my second child, I was very used to running on fumes. I carried all of my workaholic habits as that I had before children right over into motherhood. And maybe some of these will sound familiar to y'all out there today. I would run on 5 hours of sleep. I had too much coffee, not enough movement. Nature was something reserved as a special indulgence for vacations, and a gratitude practice about once a year, usually on Thanksgiving. And kind of most of all, a terrible relationship with boundaries. I really didn't know how to say no. And instead I said yes a lot. So after my son Wyatt was born, when I was forced to slow down, you know, I had a newborn and a very active toddler, as relaxing as that could be. My body finally rebelled. I wound up in the hospital with double pneumonia, I was there for a week, and then I went home for another 3 in bed with a daily visit from a nurse to give me IV antibiotics. So when I recovered, I realized something had to change, and I started studying self-care and really changing my way of taking care of myself and being in the world. So that baby is going to graduate high school in the spring. So I've had some time to work on this and to explore it. And together in this session, what I hope we're going to do is explore some of the foundations of self-care and then really start to build your very own self-care plan. So a little bit more about me. As Kara mentioned, I'm an adult and adolescent psychotherapist. I work in Pasadena and Los Angeles. And I'm part of a practice, a really wonderful practice, multidisciplinary practice called the Center for Connection. But one of the best things about my job is I get to work with families and parents. And I get to help parents discover some of what we're going to talk about today, how to really take care of themselves so they can best take care of others through their work and in their families. So I'm gonna. So before we begin, y'all been in sessions this morning and hearing a lot of information, learning a lot of new things, I hope. So I'm going to ask you to get really comfortable. So wherever you're sitting, notice the support in your chair. Maybe grab a wrap or a blanket for your legs if it's chilly. If you have a cup of tea or a view out your window, if you can light a candle. Bonus points for all of those things. Just kind of take this time to be in this space together. So when you're settled, I'm going to ask you to take a couple of deep breaths to start, just there on your own, right where you are. And I'm going to explain what I mean when I say deep breath. So, it might sound easy, but it's really not simple. So to really get the benefit, I want you to imagine inflating a beach ball in your tummy. And with each inhale, you're going to push the air down below your diaphragm and inflate that beach ball. With each exhale, let it deflate. Now here's the trick. I want you to try exhaling just a little bit longer than the inhale. So I like to inhale for a count of 4. And exhale for a count of 5. Let's try it again. Just inhale for 4. And exhaling for 5. So I hope you notice even just a couple of breaths, the shift in your nervous system. And I really, really love to talk about breathing like this because that extended duration of the exhale is what actually down regulates our sympathetic nervous system. And that is the part of our nervous system, the branch that gets recruited when we're going into fight or flight. And when our stress is just jumping into the driver's seat. So that extra beat on the exhale is like tapping on the brakes. It's one of the best tools we have to slow everything down when we start getting overwhelmed. And it's always available to you, and it's something I encourage you to use in this session and to just take note of as you move through the rest of your day. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the American bard Leonard Cohen. Just kind of looking at our relationship with perfectionism when we start to talk about self-care. Ring the bells that ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the lake gets in. So the risk of belaboring the point, let's talk about why we're talking about self-care today. We were in this pandemic, and it is not going away anytime too fast. And, again, some of these things might sound very familiar to you. What are the changes that have happened in your life related to the pandemic? We have loss of routine, financial stress and loss of employment, social isolation and missed opportunities for connection, worries about getting sick or your loved one getting sick. So much information overload. I don't know if anybody is out there has done some doom scrolling, but it is real. For those of you who are professional helpers, there is secondary trauma and burnout. I know an earlier session was about trauma and the ACEs and all of the impacts on that, and the good news about how we build resilience, but the effects of trauma on our bodies and on our health. And, just this general uncertainty over time. What's going to happen next? When I talk to clients, I hear a lot of this term, Groundhog Day. I don't know if anyone else uses this to describe how they feel. Those of you who are working at home, it's all a blend. I've been working at home. Many of us are online all the time. This is really confusing to our nervous systems. As mammals, another thing that's really confusing to our nervous systems is that we are designed to feel safe in connection to other people. We co-regulate. We get calm. We feel safe when we are around other people who help us feel safe. And the message of the pandemic is that other people are not safe. So even that has this dysregulating effect on how we move through our days and our weeks. So the Harris poll, did a survey back in June. A lot of really interesting information about Americans' beliefs and attitudes about self-care during the pandemic. So here's some of the things they found. 30% of respondents reporting they're lacking energy, 29% difficulty sleeping, another 29% exercising less, nearly 50% feeling socially isolated, 64% more focused on their mental health now than ever. So what's the good news out of this poll? 44% reported they wish they had more guidance and support for practicing self-care during the pandemic. And that includes about healthy diet, stress management, regular exercise. And then 80% said they will be more mindful of trying to keep some of these habits and practicing self-care once the pandemic is over. So again, with our resilience, there's a bright side. We can slow down, learn some of these tools now and take them into the future. So before we go on, I would love to see what y'all think self-care is really about. It's kind of a buzzword out there. It'd be really interesting to see what it means to you.
I'll give it about 10 more seconds and then we can close the poll.
Thanks, Kara.
I will share those results now.
Okay, so I love this, making time for myself. High response and investing in my mental health, definitely. Notable to me here is the low numbers. And honestly, every single one of these things could be about self-care. There's no wrong answer here. And one that I think it's especially challenging to think about, and why self-care can be radical, is that it can really be about being a better parent, and being a better person in your relationships. Okay. Do I close the poll, Kara? Yes. There we go. Okay. So let's look at what it's not, as we start really defining it. So there is definitely some myths out there that self-care has to be earned through stress. I love this idea. Sometimes the stress prison, the fictional jail you imagine being sent to so you can catch up on Netflix and reading. The way that sometimes if we get sick, it's finally an excuse to rest and stay in bed. It's a myth. It doesn't have to be earned through stress. You don't have to work so hard until you're about to collapse to practice some self-care. It's all or nothing. Again, I'm going to just grind for the next 6 months, but when I take that vacation in Maui, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to relax so much for a week. It's expensive. Does not have to be. This one I love because it feels very California to me, where you have lemonade for 20 cents a glass and a lemonade cleanse for $20, and everybody's lining up for it. And if that sounds implausible, I will take you to the $12 green juice place down the street from where I live. That it's selfish. This is the one I hear the most, and the complaint I hear the most from parents who feel like it's just selfish if they're taking time for themselves and not giving it to their kids or to their family. It's an excuse to slack off. That it's really not a valid thing. It's kind of something we say to get out of stuff we don't want to do. So what are the facts? This is not my definition. This is the Oxford Dictionary. The practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. Dictionary definition of self-care. Documented benefits, because people research this. It includes increased stress resilience, which I think, especially from that session just that came before this about children and trauma, stress resilience is so important. Greater relationship satisfaction, better parenting, increased productivity. Yes, you can do more. You take time to take care of yourself, and improve physical and mental health. So I break self-care down into 4 kind of facets of approach. So we have mind, body, spirit, and relationships. So we're going to kind of go through each one of those categories and look at some actual tools that you can start to explore, experiment with, and use when we start building your own self-care plan at the end of this session or toward the end of the session. So what are tools to support your mind, to really practice active self-care of your mind? I'm going to look at these 4. And of course, there are many more. And we could do a whole weekend on self-care. I want to be clear about that. So I'm just kind of giving you a starter kit. So these 4 are ones I really enjoy, I personally use, and I work with a lot of folks who find these useful. It's mindfulness, naming your feelings. In therapy terms, we call that affect labeling. Affirming the positive, and really focusing on what's within your circle of control. So let's start with mindfulness. Mindfulness, like self-care, I would say is a really popular term. It's out there in the zeitgeist. It's practiced, at Google and, in corporations and in schools. But I don't know that we always really take the time to sit with what it means. So mindfulness, it's a state of attention to the present moment to present moment experience with openness, curiosity, and a willingness to be with what is. And what you note there is it says there's no judgment. So when you're mindful, you observe your thoughts and feelings from a distance without judging them as good or bad. And instead of letting your life pass you by, it really means living in the moment and awakening the present experience. So why is this important? Because right here is our present. And I like to unzoom. This actually works pretty well to go like, so the way we get pulled out of our present are through rumination. It's about the past. It's over here. It's already happened. We can't change it. Or worry, which is about the future. Again, out here. Can't control it. Can't really change it. Hasn't happened yet. So when we zoom into this space right here, it increases our capacity for self-regulation and self-soothing, and usually greater satisfaction with our life. So the quality of presence really mattering. How do we do that? This is one acronym that's out there. This is from published in Mindful Magazine, which is actually a great resource that gives you a lot of free content if you sign up for their newsletter. And it's called RAIN. So what do you do to really be mindful and in the present? It's getting curious, recognizing what's going on. One of my favorite questions is just to sit with something and go kind of, well, what's that about? I notice I'm getting irritable. My kids, what's happening? What's that about? Allowing the experience to be there just as it is. And investigating it with kindness. So practicing that kind of gentle approach toward yourself. And then just letting that natural awareness that comes from not identifying with the experience. A way I like to practice not identifying with the experience is to think about yourself as your mind is like the sky, and our feelings are like clouds, our thoughts and our feelings. So if I say to someone I'm working with, have you ever had a feeling that just never went away? The answer so far has always been no. So noticing the feeling, but not kind of hopping into that cloud and identifying with it. A difference might be something like even inserting the word in your own process of understanding it. I feel sad versus I am sad. It's a feeling, and allowing it to pass, being gentle, welcoming it and letting it go. And in the meantime, taking care of yourself. So, kind of at any point in time, you can practice some mindful awareness by tuning into your body, finding a posture that's comfortable. I like to notice the chair under my legs, the support behind my back, focusing on something to steady my attention, whatever that is. Maybe I can see a tree out the window from where I'm sitting, and accept whatever is passing through without chasing it, kind of being settled, being the sky. So another great tool we have to get into our present moment, or change the channel from those thoughts and feelings that might be overwhelming, is to cycle through our senses. So I practice this one. I share it regularly. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, really easy to remember. I will copy this block of text and message it to folks I work with so they can paste it and put it in a note in their phone to remember it. So just really quickly, you don't have to say it out loud. You can if you want to. You can look around the room and name 5 things you see. And I like to do it with some level of detail. So a blue clock or a green tree out the window. Name 4 physical sensations. And the bonus one is always start with feeling your feet on the floor. It is actually grounding to notice the ground beneath your feet. And maybe press, if you're sitting in a chair, you can put some pressure on your feet. Notice your feet on the floor. Tune into 3 things you hear. What are the sounds around you? 2 smells, if there's any kind of sense. If you're outside, there's often a lot more. If you're inside or there's not anything in particular, you can think of a scent you like. And then just setting an intention. Okay, how do you want to feel? Calm, peaceful, strong, alert, energized, excited, grounded, whatever the intention is for yourself right now. So this can be as kind of quick or as short as you want. I like to say you can do this. You can practice mindfulness between your front door and your car. When you walk out your front door, raise your chin, notice the sky, scan the environment, notice what you see, and continue on through your senses. And by the time you get in your car, you practice mindfulness. Congratulations. You can do it at a stoplight. You can do it washing the dishes. You can do it brushing your teeth. You can do it almost anywhere, anytime. You can do it if you're noticing your environment is starting to activate that sympathetic nervous system and you're feeling dysregulated, and just kind of turn your body even 45 degrees, kind of do a quick scan, reset, and get to the present. It's a great tool. So going on and naming your feelings. Our brain just likes this. And there's a lot of neuroscience that can explain why. This is kind of a very short summary of why labeling our feelings. So that mindful, stopping, noticing, getting curious, naming it, it promotes integration. And we thrive with integration. That's mind and body integration, integrated relationships, and left brain and right brain relationships. Integration, left, right. Sorry about that. So you may be familiar with the idea that our left brain is where we are more logical, we're guided by reason, rational, and we like to assign words to things. And our right brain is that more emotional, kind of creative, autobiographical piece. And so naming our feelings kind of helps link and integrate those parts of our brain. And even the act of that can be settling to our nervous system. So these are tools almost like Legos. You can build them and arrange them in different ways together, but really stopping to notice what you're feeling and then practicing that approach of non-judgment, noticing, does that feel settling? Does that help? So affirming the positive. Another thing that's really important because of the way our brains are wired. We are kind of walking around with hardware that was designed to help us survive when a tiger was waiting outside a cave to eat us, meaning our brain is really focused on the negative. Part of that has been for our survival. So, sorry about that. So this is called the negativity bias. Our brain holds on to negative experiences. If you had one epic fail, one time you did something really embarrassing, even if it was in third grade, there's a very good chance to remember it well. But the hundreds and hundreds of things that have been successful, that have gone well for you, might be very hard to retrieve those. Because the negative things kind of automatically go to long-term storage. And our successes, our positive experiences really need some active reflection for us to encode them, for us to move those into the files as well. So directing our attention to our strengths and successes can actually help build new neural networks in our brains. And where our attention goes, neurons fire, neurons that fire together, wire together. So even throughout the lifespan, we have this benefit of neuroplasticity, where we can help our brains expand their resilience and create new networks to really experience a felt sense of the positive in our own successes. So the trick with this is like going to the gym. It takes reps, it takes consistent practice to pay off. So it doesn't have to be a huge success. It could be something pretty minor that went well, but really taking time at the end of the day or throughout your day to reflect on it can really help this practice. And our circle of control. So this one, I think I've used so much during the pandemic, especially in the early months. And now we're kind of returning back to it when I'm meeting with clients. So so much is out of our control right now. That's kind of what our, initial list about what's going on in the pandemic. We can't control the weather, what other people think of you, traffic, although it's a lot better here now that nobody's leaving their house. Politics, so many things not in our control. But focusing again, like getting into the present, getting into our circle of control can increase that sense of resilience and well-being. And it's a way to take care of yourself. So what's in your control? Your decisions, your thoughts, your effort that you put into things. Just like sleep. And we're going to talk about our sensory systems in a little bit too. And, really importantly, how you take care of yourself and others. So trying to zoom in, be in the present, look at what we can control day to day. I know, I have not only my high school senior, but I have my older son is going to be 20 next week. And we talk about this a lot. These kids are in, times of their life where a lot of change is happening. They're trying to plan for changes, and a lot feels out of their control right now. So we kind of zero in, where is our control? Okay, so that is mind. And Kara, let me ask you, or Christine, before we go into our next section, were there any questions about that section that would be worth addressing now?
There were not. We just had one comment that says no mistakes, no learning.
Very
no
true.
questions.
Yeah, that's very true. And I like that because when we talk about self-compassion, it's very important to let ourselves fail, make mistakes. Okay, so living in how we care for our bodies. So elements I like to focus on are sleep, movement, nourishment, touch, and caring for our sensory systems. So when we talk about sleep, one thing I've noticed is that during the pandemic, I'm getting more sleep, and it's pretty remarkable. It's pretty just life-changing to get more sleep. I'm not waking up the crack of dawn, making breakfast, getting lunches, doing school drop-offs with a long carpool line, fighting traffic to get to my office, getting another hour of sleep. And it's really changed my own sense of resilience. So the general recommendations for sleep, for really practicing this good sleep self-care, include going to bed around the same time each night. I'm sure you've all heard this. Don't bring your devices to bed. Try to shut them down. Ideally an hour before bed, if not that, 30 minutes or so, giving your eyes and your brain a break from the screen, which is actually energizing and wakes us up. And having some kind of wind down routine. I've been reading before bed for about 40 years. And so whatever that is, it could be checking in with a loved one. It could be doing some deep breathing. It could be taking a hot bath. But having a routine that tells your body it's time to wind down. And when it's consistent, our body recognizes it as such.
Christine, we have a question that came in that I think is relevant right now. And it says, What about teachers who have such an increase in work, online teaching, and in person?
First, I feel for you and admire you. I feel for teachers so much right now. So that makes it harder for, what I'm assuming that means is it's harder to get more sleep, and it's harder to get off the screen because you have so much work. So I don't think there's an easy answer for that, but we might get to, when we kind of talk about boundaries, look at, is there some room to push your boundary out a little bit further to feel like you get the rest you need? One of my best friends here is a teacher, and I've really seen it, and she's had to get pretty radical about having a boundary, and even she might mean she's socializing with us less in our socially distant way than she would usually, because she needs the rest. So on waking up, our brains really like it. Our bodies like it when we can get as much light as possible. You know, I have this benefit. I live in Southern California. We have a lot of sunlight. I can walk into my yard. I know you all might be looking into the winter months where it's darker and maybe darker for days at a time. There are even blue lights you can buy to sit out while you have coffee or breakfast to get some of that light through your eyes to wake up your brain. And again, a routine. Our bodies really like a routine. If you take a shower first thing in the morning, if you do some yoga stretches, if your first thing is having coffee and petting your cat, whatever it is, if it's being with your family, making breakfast, but what's the routine and kind of keeping it consistent. So for movement, this isn't my only slide on movement, and it's kind of purposeful because I think it's so important to honor your body and start where you are. And I'm really purposeful in saying movement here and not exercise. Exercise feels, you know, this is the thing you should do because it's good for you. Whereas movement is a way to really befriend your body and notice what feels good. And maybe getting on your yoga mat and simply doing, this is Shavasana, or the resting pose, corpse pose, is all you can do that day. And that's okay. But noticing what movement, what position feels supportive of your body and making time for it. We're spending a lot of time, many of us, sitting at a screen. So even small breaks of movement, I try to schedule my day so I have at least 10 or 15 minutes where I can get up, and I could easily just keep sitting and working in between, but I try to always get up and move. Maybe do a stretch or just walk around my house or step outside. So just looking at movement with intention, whatever that means for you. And again, thinking about food as nourishment. Right now, my son is discovered cooking. I'm very lucky. You have a 17-year-old who enjoys cooking, and he's gotten really into learning how to make different things. And he was upset one day because the groceries delivery didn't include something he needed. I was kind of confused, like, it's, you know, what's going on? And he kind of broke down and shared it's one of the few things he really looks forward to right now. It's one of the things he has in the pandemic is to make food that's really delicious and he can share with us. So this is something that's really important to us right now, but looking at food as nourishment. That doesn't mean we're not going to treat ourselves, but also looking at it as a way of caring for your body. And, you know, so again, sometimes we're going to treat ourselves, and sometimes we're going to take care of ourselves or practice self-care by saying no to some things that feel good. So just kind of being mindful of the bigger picture. How are you really caring for yourself? So touch. This is something we're really having a deficit of in this time. I know when I see my friends socially distant, we kind of do this funny little like hi, hug gesture. But we're not engaging in the same way. We're not shaking hands. We're not hugging our friends and family who are outside of our pods often, if we're even seeing them. So these are a few self-touch tools that you can use at any time throughout your day. This one I really like. It's the acupressure point called Happy Valley. You can even try it right now. Just apply some firm pressure and notice it's known to help reduce stress. Again, you can do this. I can do this sitting here on Zoom with you and you don't know I'm doing it. But it kind of activates my system, but also feels grounding. A pat down. This is something that can be fun maybe when you're taking that break or you're getting up and you don't have a lot of time. But you know, really doing a pat down would mean, I'm not going to do it on screen right now, but bend over, pat your legs, pat all the way up and down, back, backs of your legs, fronts of your legs, over your shoulders, even top your head. Just kind of signaling your body that you are in a safe container. That is your body. And it can be energizing too. And the third one I share a lot is this butterfly hug. So again, talk a lot about nervous system regulation. These are tools to help you feel calm and in your body. And bilateral stimulation is something that can help that. So you can do it with tapping, just calming the nervous system. Another tool or touch is also doing with just kind of like some nice long strokes on your arms, which generates some GABA and some serotonin. Kind of gives a nice little soothing bath to your brain. So all kind of tools, again, you can mix and match and try out. Hopefully right now. And when we can, we know, again, people study this, there are scientific benefits to hugs and physical affection with a loved one. So this has made it harder to practice. We're missing this. So when you can hug, do it. People in your home, when it's safe, however you can. Hug with intention and attention. Notice how that feels in your body. And so the last kind of piece about our bodies and self-care, it's really attending to our sensory systems. And when we did in the mindfulness practice 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that was using our senses to kind of change the channels from thoughts or feelings. So really noticing what helps us fill our tank, put some gas in our sensory system. So nature, when we can, just getting outside. It's something we really can. It's still available to us. What we can do. Can you hike? Can you swim? Can you play in the snow? I checked the weather out there. It doesn't look like you guys have any snow right now, but I'm sure you will. Just looking for adventure. How can we get outside? When weather permitting, walking barefoot in the grass. Documented benefits of that. Getting more cozy, using your favorite essential oils, lighting a scented candle, wrapping yourself in a soft kind of fuzzy blanket or a weighted blanket. I don't know if anybody has tried a weighted blanket. They are, again, become much more popular. They used to be very expensive and now are much more accessible. We even have them at Target. That soothes our nervous system, just to have that weight, again, feeling that safe container of your body. And hot shower, a bath, really being aware of that sensation. Can combine some of these things, bring some of your favorite essential oil into the shower and put some drops into the floor and make it a spa with letting the steam kind of fill the shower with that scent. So any questions on the body before we move into spirit, Kara?
Yes, I do have one question. Do you have suggestions to start a new routine, such as getting up earlier, etc.?
Yeah, slowly with achievable goals. So if you wanted to get up earlier, if you wanted to wake up an hour earlier, I would say wake up 10 or 15 minutes earlier for a few days and then keep dialing it back. And when you do it successfully, you give yourself so many props for it. So affirming the positive, consolidating what's going right. So, and if you oversleep one day, you practice that non-judgment and you're just kind to yourself and you get back up and get back on the horse and try it again. So small steps for new habits. I don't want to, you don't want to quit coffee cold turkey because it gives you a headache. You want to do these baby steps and be so gentle with yourself.
And then one other question that came in was suggestions on how to deal with messages before or after the hours we set to try not to burn out. No way to turn it off.
Yes, I have this too. I simply don't answer them. So unless it's an emergency. So it can be helpful to set that boundary, even saying you won't respond to messages outside of working hours unless it's an emergency. I don't know, I know there's some apps and things like that. I don't have different phones. I have one number and it's my work and it's my life. And I just make it a habit to kind of not respond and respect my own boundary after the hours. And that goes with checking email, certainly with like work email, no checking work email like after whatever boundary you set. For me, it's about 7 p.m. I tend to work a little later.
Great. And that's the end of the questions that are in there at the moment.
Thank you. Thanks for those questions. They're really good questions. So moving into spirit. So I have 2 tools here, but they are big ones, really big, important ones. So some of you may have heard of the practice of self-compassion. This is another thing that you actually can do entire workshops or weekends on. It's adapted from the work of Kristen Neff. The resources are in the end of the handout, but the super quick summary about practicing self-compassion are these 3 tools. So one, self-kindness. And what do I mean by that? I mean being as kind to yourself as you would to a friend or a loved one. So, so many times I'll say to a client, I'll say, like, imagine I'm your sister. What would you say to her if she was telling you what you're down on yourself about? And it's always words of encouragement. You're doing your best. Give yourself time. You need to take care of yourself. And I say, okay, so if we turn it around and you say that to yourself, and it's always, oh, that's so hard. I just can't do it. So that is really as simple as it is, the basic of being as kind to yourself as you would to a friend or a loved one. And that can be as simple as saying like, oh, this is really hard, or this is a moment of struggle. The way Kristen Neff puts it. To kind of recognizing the common humanity of that. So if it's hard or it's a moment of struggle, kind of tapping in instead of letting the way those negative feelings want us to feel isolated, noticing that actually makes us more part of the human community. Everybody struggles. Everybody feels pain. Things are hard for everybody sometimes. And the third is bringing in those mindfulness tools of being with it without judgment and a softness and kindness to kind of be in the present and letting it pass. So what I've found is that this one quote from Kristen Neff is something that comes up for me a lot. And this is that where people get it wrong is they think their standards will drop and they won't try as hard if they're compassionate with themselves. And it's totally untrue. So we kind of have this wiring that says, if I am not hard on myself, I'm just gonna stop in my tracks. I'm not gonna move forward. And it's really not true. We don't have to drive ourselves that hard to actually keep moving forward. So some of the research that we have on this, putting people in fMRI scanners and looking what happens in their brains, is that harsh self-criticism actually activates our sympathetic nervous system, which is that branch of our nervous system that gets recruited during that fight, flight kind of anxiety mode. It elevates our stress hormones. So that means adrenaline and cortisol is coursing through our body. And it can be so intense, it kind of shuts down that part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, that helps us learn. So it can kind of be like a stop sign to what we want, which is to keep moving forward. And it stops us from being resilient, using that resilience in the face of failure. So the earlier comment about mistakes to learn can be very relevant there. So self-compassion, on the other hand, can activate a biological nurturant and soothing system. that leads to greater feelings of well-being. So instead of those stress hormones, we're generating more of the neurochemicals that help us feel grounded, calm, and like we have the ability to access our resilience. So if you want to do super shorthand, it's really about giving yourself the same care and attention that you give to others, and watch yourself bloom. So the second piece of this spirit approach is practicing gratitude. Again, another field that there's a lot of research on at this point, a little bit buzzwordy. You can, you see gratitude journals at Target. There are apps. There's a lot of emphasis on it. But it's really, again, about making it your own. So some people really like keeping a gratitude journal. I actually have, I've tried a lot of the different apps. There are apps on your phone where you keep gratitude app and it will prompt you during the day to name something you're grateful for. You can do it more kind of old school, no tech, and just in the morning or in the evening, kind of reflect on 3 things you're grateful for. You can do this on your own. You can share it with family or loved ones. Just really notice little things. So again, where your attention goes, neurons fire. Neurons that fire together wire together. Noticing the small things you're grateful for, that can build up those networks of resilience. The lovely one is actually writing a handwritten thank you note. It's a practice that's kind of fallen out, but the practice of doing that and putting in the envelope and the stamp and sending it off in the mail, it feels good. It's a nice practice. And just in general, being intentional as you express your gratitude to others. So that might mean your words, that might mean your body language. I mean, really bringing the presence of your smile if you don't have your mask on. I think when you're out in the world and we're masked, it's even more important to kind of use words or maybe eye contact and thank people. Someone was talking about thanking the toll booth taker on the road and being like really kind of noticing the small things. And this is a job and the cold and the toll booth, and really being intentional to make eye contact and saying thank you for doing this service. Any questions about those two, which are really quite big topics, before we move on to the last facet?
Yep, just a couple. So one question is, what gratitude apps do you use?
Oh, well, I might have to follow up with that because I don't want to dig on my phone. But I actually think there's one that's just called Gratitude. If you go into the App Store, oh yeah, there's one that's just called Gratitude with an exclamation mark, and that's the one I've used the most.
And someone else dropped in the chat, the I Am app is wonderful.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. I'll check that one out too.
So just I Am. And then the other 2 questions are kind of related a little bit to the boundaries and just kind of managing all of this. Is what if you're expected to be available all the time by bosses, or you have multiple jobs?
Well, we're going to talk about boundaries right now. So I think those are really great questions. Let's get into this section. So number 1 in the relationship tools is setting boundaries. I will kind of scan quickly through these in your support network and having some accountability partners. But so the boundaries, it's really hard when it's your boss. I actually had a client with this struggle last night where her boss was just kind of creeping over with texts late at night and kind of expecting her to kind of soothe a lot of like his anxieties and worries that was really outside the scope of her job. So it is really hard to set a boundary when there's a power differential. I ask, on this slide, when are you saying yes when you really mean no? And that can mean taking on volunteer opportunities or jumping in to head up things at work, feeling like you have to. And, there's a saying that goes, no is a complete sentence. really hard for us to do. Really, really hard for us to do. So in terms of this, like a boss that expects you to be available all the time, I don't know what's possible. And I recognize it takes a lot of courage to talk to your boss about a boundary. But I wonder if it's possible to have a conversation or even start it with an email to talk about resetting your boundaries about what your window of availability is. And especially if you have multiple jobs, I wonder how can you be available all the time for one boss if you have to go to another job? That's a very good reason to have a boundary and to meet those responsibilities. In general, the pandemic has been a good time to take a relationship inventory and kind of look at what are the relationships where you are nourished and kind, and what are the ones where you find that you're giving and your oxygen is depleting and you're not kind of getting it back, and seeing if there's a way to rearrange or even put aside those relationships that no longer serve you. That that I like this cartoon because again, it's kind of our natural inclination. We're in the fixing others section of the bookstore. It's what we want to do because it does feel good to help. And I know many here today are, your professional helpers. But checking that and knowing that, again, going back to self-care is not selfish. Self-care actually expands your bandwidth and capacity to be there for those you want to be there for. In general, I think we're kind of all looking for this, landing right in this sweet spot. And through bringing in that piece of self-compassion, I think especially, you really deserve, every single one of you, to land in this spot where you are noticing you're appreciated and valued and loved. And having that feeling start with you. So self-care really starting with putting yourself first without guilt that it's selfish, without worry you're neglecting other duties, and having that felt sense of unconditional love and acceptance for yourself, and putting it out there. So you move your boundary maybe a little bit further so that you can rest in this place. Some other great questions are kind of like, what do I need more of? And where could I cut back? Or what could I use less of? So I know, trying to track time. So let's
It's just about 15 minutes left.
Okay, so let's get the second poll done.
So I'm going to release the CEU poll.
Yeah, so right before that, we're going to do our CEU poll for those who are getting CEUs, and then we'll do this second poll.
I'll give it about 20 more seconds as the last votes are coming in. Okay, I'm ending polling. And that correct answer is Lake Ontario. And then Christine, are you ready for me just to go right into poll 2 for you?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, sure. All right, so how much time do you currently spend on self-care each day?
go about 10 more seconds and then we'll close that poll.
Okay, so I'm thrilled to see, almost a third spending 30 minutes and another near third spending an hour and some even 2 hours or more. And that leaves more than a third with 5 minutes or less or none. So for those that are already practicing, I'm eager to share this next kind of exercise of making your own plan. And especially for those with 5 minutes or none, I really hope that you can take some of the tools we're talking about and use them in creating a plan that you can start using as soon as today. Okay. So, here's the fun part. Starting your plan right now. So if you have a blank piece of paper handy, or you can flip over your handout if you printed it out. I want you to divide a sheet of paper into 4 sections. So 4 quadrants or 4 columns, however it works for you. And note each one of these things we just went through: mind, body, spirit, and relationships is the heading for each section. And in each section, you're going to create 2 columns or 2 rows with a current practice, if you have one, and a new practice you'd like to add. And if you don't have one, you want to add a new practice, you don't have a movement practice, but you want to add some yoga, that's okay. You don't have to have anything current to add something new. And just really quickly, without worrying about being too specific, just kind of noting like maybe how much time or what days you'd like to designate for each practice. Sometimes we want to do Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, or whatever it is. And is it morning, or is it evening, or is it lunch? So kind of noting that. And I'm going to give you just a little overview of some ideas that you might add to this, but by all means, it is not a comprehensive list. But some things that can count as self-care that you might want to add to your plan. Tidying your workspace, cooking something delicious. And that, in my house, that's something my son does for self-care. Walk your dog, sing thank you, some yoga. You may already apply body lotion, but you do it with intention. Notice the touch, that kind of care for your skin and your body as you do it. Doing one thing on your to-do list and really enjoying crossing it off. I have a list where I make check boxes and I cross and I check. It helps me feel like I'm affirming something positive. I've done something on my list. Trying something that's kind of a nice cognitive distraction. Word puzzles, crosswords, Sudoku, really popular. Arranging flowers. Asking for one thing you need, probably one of the hardest ones. Asking for one thing you need. And it doesn't have to be big. Again, building up the reps of that muscle. Asking for one thing you need might be you're tired or you're busy and you ask for someone to bring you a glass of water. That's okay. Ask for something you need. Notice how it goes and build on it. Cuddling your cat. Drinking that glass of water with intention, noticing you're kind of hydrating your body. I like to do this one where I go outside in the morning and sip my coffee, taking a hot shower, again, that walking barefoot outside, connecting with friends, hugging your child, say a prayer. Those who journal or who would like to return to it or try it, journal. 3 deep breaths. You can do that in about 30 seconds. If you get 5 minutes of alone time, really notice it and be with it. lighting a scented candle, kissing your partner, dance around the house, turn up some music, drawing, coloring. There's some wonderful even paint. I know people doing these kind of paint by number paintings that are gorgeous and look like really professional paintings, and enjoying that kind of thing. So I know we have to be mindful of time, but I want you to start this now. And if you even fill in one idea of each section of that self-care plan, fantastic. So the second thing I'd like you to start or save a page for and maybe work on later today is another sheet of paper where you can have your self-care go-tos. And these can be ones that you put up on your fridge or over your desk or someplace you can see. And, the categories I like are a song that soothes you, a movie or a show that transports you. Anybody watching The Crown? I can't stop right now. A food or a meal that satisfies you, a movement or exercise that energizes you, an activity or hobby that sparks you, a practice that grounds you, can be one of the ones we did earlier today. Person you can reach out to, someone who's a go-to, you can text or call, and just an affirmation that reminds you you are worthy of self-care. And that can be as complex or as simple as works for you. It can be as simple as I am worthy of care. I am worthy of love and belonging exactly as I am. So this is kind of a go-to, and you can start this and you can kind of, edit it maybe as the weekend goes on and think about it. But this is one I like to see on your bulletin board. So I did share this link to a video, maybe over the weekend if you have time you want to look at. It's a beautiful about 6-minute film by Louis Schwartzberg, who does this gorgeous nature cinematography. His films are in hospitals, even help people recovering in hospitals to watch nature videos. But it's really moving and beautiful. And the link is there for you when you want to try it out. So let's do this quick third poll, and then we can do some Q&A if there's any more questions.
Do about 10 more seconds and then we can close this poll for you, Christine.
Okay, thank you, Kara. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you for doing that. I'm thrilled to see that there's more than half that really feel ready and like it's important to commit. And for the other 44% of folks who answered feeling a little wobbly about it, I feel that. And so I want to encourage you to choose one thing. You don't know if you can follow through, set yourself up for success and start with that one really small, doable thing, and then reflect on the achievement of it, that you can do it. And you build from there. Like self-care, like I said, can be practiced between your front door and your car, just on that short walk. And think about it that way and give yourself credit for it. So we're running low on time, so I want to see if there's any final questions.
I do not have any currently in the Q&A, so if there's any questions folks have and they haven't dropped them in, feel free to do so.
Okay. So just sharing some more resources. These are just a small smattering of some of my favorites that relate to self-care and the work of self-compassion. This link here to the self-care inventory, if you want to dive a little deeper into it, is really great. It's a very comprehensive list that takes you through your practices and your goals. And that's just available online. And, kind of, I'm from California, so I've always loved this this particular quote and image. John Kabat-Zinn is kind of one of the godfathers of the modern mindfulness movement and research. He's a doctor who brought meditation to work with cancer patients at UMass, and it's kind of built into more of the contemporary practice of meditation and mindfulness. But you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. And really investing in self-care is a great way to get on that surfboard. So
and as we close out, someone had just Hope had put into the Q&A that not necessarily a question, but that I find this very helpful and gave me a lot to think about. So
wonderful. I'm so glad. I very much hope so. And I wish you all radical self-care and well-being in this time. And thank you so much for being here and for sharing your space with me and having me at your conference.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I know. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
I was going to thank you everybody for attending tonight. I know there's, and I appreciate your patience with a little bit of technical difficulties that we had. But I want to thank you for joining the first conference that we've ever had. I do want to remind you that I'll be sending out a link to everybody for the evaluation. Your feedback's really important, so I hope you're kind and honest. I would love to hear what you have to say so we can present this again without all the technical difficulties behind the scene. But again, thank you, and I appreciate it. Remember, next year we do have a date set for November 8th, 2021, and you'll be getting details on that. And with that, I'm just thank you for attending, and thank you, Christine. Much needed.
Well, thank you. I hope you all take good care this weekend.
Oh, I did, for those of you still on, I did put the evaluation link in the chat, but you will also get an email.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Christine, I will provide you all the feedback that you will need once I compile it.